I think Bo Nix is easily one of the biggest sleepers in this quarterback side of this draft.
94 total touchdowns in 2 years to 10 interceptions. A 9-to-1 ratio on those. That's nuts.
I don't see a lot not to like about this guy. I'm Johnny Manziel at the Action Network Studios, joined by my boy Kurt Benkert, and this is Franchise Mode, QB Edition. We're breaking down the 2024 NFL Draft class of quarterbacks. Let's talk Bo Nix, the Oregon Duck. The most games out of anybody played on this list of guys that we've gone over so far. 61 total games in college. I think this guy has a lot of opportunity. A lot of it will come down to where he's going to be drafted, but a 5-year starter, I mean, in his senior year just alone last year, these numbers are crazy. 4,500 passing yards, 45 touchdowns, 3 picks. The guy's got a 45-3 touchdown to interception ratio. That's just unheard of. You know, that's just like, looking back at this, it kind of makes me think, like, how was this guy not a Heisman winner? You know, like, really, really, truly think he could have got a lot more credit in this Heisman Trophy run than he got just based off these numbers. And if you go back and look throughout their season, their real only downfalls and pitfalls outside of maybe one game were their 2 games against University of Washington. And Washington had probably one of the best defenses in the country, to be honest, if you look at college football as a whole last year. Played a ton of ball, has a lot of experience, has a lot of intangibles. I think me and you both agree that this guy has a lot to work with coming out into this draft.
I would say he's the most that I'm excited about besides Jaden Daniels, mainly because, look, you look at his numbers. He had 77% completion percentage. He got better every single year in college. 5 years, it went from 57% in year 1 to now 77% in year 5. He had 9.6 yards per attempt. And I went and watched his film. I watched all of his total of 3 interceptions last year. Only one of them did he actually throw to a defender. The other 2 were tip passes. One of them hit his player's chest and popped up. The other one through a player's hands. So this guy's accurate. He knows how to see coverage. He can distribute the ball. I hope that he gets into an offense where he can just be him, distribute it, play point guard. And that's what he is. He's a really accurate point guard playing quarterback that, by the way, is undervalued as an athlete. I've seen some of the plays that he's made with his feet. He can really run. He can make people miss. He's got some wiggle to him. He can open up, but he gets the ball out quick. So a lot of the times, some of those big plays that you'd see in the run game out of him as a quarterback didn't even get to happen because he was distributing the rock on time. So I look at some of these pieces of what I'm seeing in this national narrative around him. And again, he could go and play. I look at a team like Miami, the Dolphins. If you had Bo Nix at quarterback, say you take him, say he falls to the second round and you want to get some security behind Tua, who you thought might have actually retired last year because of the concussions. I'm looking at a guy like Bo Nix that you can trust to operate the offense, distribute the rock, put it downfield, short, intermediate. And I think that they would be a nasty team for him to end up at. I think he's going to go to a team that needs a quarterback because of what we've seen on film and what we've seen out of the stats. But I could also see him going to a guy like Sean Payton, who likes to stretch the ball vertical down. And I don't know, man. I'm looking at Bo Nix like he's an exciting pickup for any team. He's got good character. People talk highly of him. And there's not really much you can say besides because he's 6'2", 214. He's not a 6'3", 6'4 guy. He's not built like Drake May. He plays really well, and he's ready.
Yeah, I think for me, what I just wrote here right now is he's, out of the guys we've spoken about in this segment, I think he's the biggest sleeper right next to J.J. McCarthy. I think those are the 2 guys that have the most likelihood out of the 6 that we'll discuss, have the most likelihood to potentially slip into the second, even third round, just based off some of the questions that are there. I don't think there are a ton. I don't think it's, warranted, but nevertheless, it's all about fit, and it's all about, getting back to, do teams really, really need quarterbacks as badly as fans or other media outlets are stressing that they do? When it comes down to it, only the GMs and the head coaches and the people behind the decision-making are going to be able to tell what that is. So this is both a good thing and a bad thing for both J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is easily one of the biggest sleepers in this quarterback side of this draft. I have him listed probably at the 5 or the 6 out of the guys that we're talking about here, just from, what I've seen, what I've watched, and what he's, put on film. And I think one thing about this draft class as well is being 5 or 6 ranked in this draft class is not a bad thing, not a slight. It's not, a negative connotation on their ability to go play the game of football. It strictly comes down to who is coming out right now and where are you based on a skill level football, strictly quarterback side of this list. I mean, you go back and look at it. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, McCarthy, Nix, Penix, like these guys are real cats. Somebody on this list is going to have to get left towards the bottom. And for me, I just see that as being Bo Nix strictly based off me and how I watch the game of football. It has nothing to do with him and who he is as a player. Somebody's just got to be at the bottom of this list. And to me, in my list, it has to be Bo Nix. And with that being said, there's still so much room for him to go get in a situation. And this guy could potentially even beat somebody out in a training camp this fall to be a starter. Like, he does have that kind of ability. It is there. It's about getting with somebody and pulling that out of him, because I think as a football player, as a competitor, and as a quarterback, all of the intangibles you need to be a starting NFL quarterback are there. It's just, is he going to develop? Is he going to continue to ride off this high of a great senior season, a great 5th year? And the biggest thing that I like about him more than anything, and I wrote it down 3 times, is 61 total games played. That's a lot of college football that doesn't come with durability issues, that comes with nothing but getting better from, yards per attempt to touchdowns, less interceptions. A passer rating of 188.3 last year is off the charts. And you go and you take out, his first 3 years at Auburn, his passer rating for his 2 years at Oregon is going to average out somewhere around 175, which is just off the charts great. 113 touchdowns total in his career, just passing, and another 38 on rushing. So the numbers are there. The history is there. He's played at 2 different conferences and 2 different schools and been successful for the most part at both. I don't see a lot not to like about this guy as far as what NFL GMs and what coaches are saying, as far as if I was sitting in an NFL, head coaching room.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cumulative of what he did at Oregon the last 2 years. So 45 touchdowns passing, you had 29 more touchdowns passing, quick math, 74?
Yep.
And then you add another 20 rushing. That is 94 total touchdowns in 2 years to 10 interceptions. A 9-to-1 ratio on those. Like, that's nuts. And if you look at him too, a guy like Bo Nix, if he came out in Kenny Pickett's draft class, he would have been drafted top 5 probably.
Easily.
But he didn't. And so all of the quarterback ratings and rankings and like where they go is so relative to the year. Some years are QB heavy like this one. I mean, this could shake out to be one of the best quarterback drafts of all time because there's so many good guys coming out at the same time. And I don't know, man. I'm hoping for him that he doesn't go to a team that needs him to be the savior again, because he's a really good point guard playing quarterback. He's super accurate. And I know there's teams right now that I think if he played how he did at Oregon last year, for some of the NFL teams that were needy at quarterback last year, they would have been better teams with Bo Nix than who they had. And I'm looking at some of these guys like later down the list. I know a lot of these teams we talk about don't necessarily on paper need quarterbacks, or they don't they're not necessarily looking for one according to the media. But let's be honest, the Packers drafted Jordan Love while they had Aaron Rodgers after Aaron Rodgers went to go win 2 more MVPs. He sat for a few years. I'm looking at some of these teams like Miami. They're not sure about Tua's contract yet. They don't know what it looks like. He was going to retire potentially 2 years ago. I think Bo Nix, if he slid to 21, that might be a good pick. I'm looking at, Seattle. Geno's a little bit older. Are they looking for a quarterback now or are they not? I don't know. I think that might be an okay fit. I'm looking at Vegas. Vegas definitely needs a quarterback. I think that they'll go somebody maybe like Penix that's a little bit higher ranked, whatever. But there are teams that could use Bo Nix right now. There are teams that could use Bo Nix 2 to 3 years from now. He's ready. He has a lot of time on task. And more so than anything, like you said about Kevin O'Connell, you don't care about size, you care about accuracy. He checks so many boxes for these coaches. And it's not just the stats, it's the film too. The proof is in the pudding once the draft rolls through. And for a guy like Bo Nix, especially knowing that you could go first round to a team later, get that 5th-year deal. You could sit for 2 to 3 years behind somebody that they might not even think needs replacing right now. And it's not necessarily a wasted pick because it's an investment. And I think one thing that we also haven't talked about yet in the first round, I see some people mocking him top 10, top 15, whatever. And maybe that's true. Maybe teams will reach, in my opinion. But drafting someone in the first round that you do not need immediately comes with a huge opportunity cost of missing out on a first round receiver, a first round DB, a first round edge rusher that physically just go make impacts year one most of the time. So outside of team need, there's this opportunity cost of, okay, if you are willing to invest in a quarterback that you need 3 years from now, you're willing to give up something else that's a need right now.
Let me give you a great example to this. This is exactly the point of what you're talking about that I don't think I've ever shared with anybody. In the 2014 draft, as we're going through the process, me and my agent and my team, the St. Louis Rams had 2 picks in that draft, the 2nd and the 13th, I believe it was. They were a team that had a quarterback need in a sense. Having talked with Les Snead and the people that we had talked to within the organization, there was a very high probability, we thought on our part, that maybe the Rams with 2 picks in the first 13 would have an opportunity to come and draft me. One where it was a mutual talking to, there were talks there, right? When the 13th pick came around, there was a guy by the name of Aaron Donald that was sitting there in that spot. A guy out of Pitt who I had seen at the College Football Awards the year before, tenacious, big ass dude, a game-changing type of player who's gonna go get a gold jacket here in the foreseeable future. That pick came up and made it to where they don't need a quarterback. They need a guy who's gonna rip the quarterback's head off. A guy who literally changed the defense for that franchise forever. So as you go through these drafts, no matter how much you may know or think you know or what it is, if a generational type of talent is sitting there in a spot that may be a quarterback need, there is a no-brainer for these NFL teams to go grab an edge rusher who they believe moves the needle. Everybody, or an offensive lineman, everybody is always looking for that next 10-year starter at left tackle or that 10-year starter at defensive end that they give 3 contracts to. And that's just the fact and basis of the NFL. When I think back about me going back and getting drafted, right? I was in a 2014 draft class that, like, you know, we had a couple guys in there, but no surefire who was going to be the number 1 guy, who was this all-generational talent. You know, we've seen what the guys in the draft class are now just based off time is going by. But how I equate it in my situation, if I'm sitting there being Bo Nix, is like, you know, the 2015 draft class, which I always thought if I would have stayed in school another year, right, and come out again the next year. 2015 draft is Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, 2 Heisman Trophy winners who come out after that just based off who those guys are with size and this and that and generational talent ability. In my opinion, like I would have been the 3rd quarterback taken off that draft no matter what. No matter how good I was, what it was, just based off who those guys were as players, there's no chance any GM in their right mind, in a sane headspace, would have taken me over Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston. And that's just like the fact of the situation of what happens in some of these quarterback draft years. Like, it's better for guys like Bo Nix to have quarterback go 1, 2, 3 and get those quarterbacks off the board to when the draft continues on and you get into the windows of 15 through 30, right? 15 through the end of the first round of the draft. You know, you have these GMs, you have these coaches looking at best available player based on how the draft has shaken out. So with that being said, if you get into some of these later draft teams at the end of the first round, which by the way, is a phenomenal place to go just based off the way the system is. Less pressure going late in the first round, right? You still get your guaranteed deal. You still get a 5th-year option on that deal by being a first-round pick. And you go to a team that's already more established in the standings from the year before. You go to a team with a better roster, with a team that went to the playoffs, with a team who has pieces around you as a quarterback where it's a little less pressure-filled situation. So that's why I think I like Bo Nix being at the back end of this quarterback list, that you could see 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, and then you get some quarterback needy teams from 10 through 30 that really need a guy like that, and he fits their spot. That's how we see 6 quarterbacks go in the first round of this NFL draft. And that pretty much brings us to a final wrap on Bo Nix. Thanks for watching another Franchise Mode QB edition. Thanks to Kurt. Please like and comment on this video, and make sure to subscribe to the Action Network YouTube channel. And check out my guy Kurt on YouTube as well for all your X's and O's football knowledge. Appreciate you guys.